you're doing that type of machines. First, we installed machines were just dispensing machines, and they had a separate card for it. And then we decided whenever we switched out of the biometrics to the proximity, we decided that we were going to integrate all of that access into one card. So whenever you're issued the card, if you have access, if you have the privileges to be able to pull scrubs, it showed whether you have privileges to pull hospital scrubs or you need to go to the vendor bathrooms to get the green scrubs. So
Okay. Mm-hmm.
so it's stuff like that is kind of we've always these are always the challenges of operation, but in general, I mean, like I said, there is involvement in a lot of these different pieces of really all aspects of hospital operations, because right now there isn't that much that goes around within the hospital without having to even be connected to an IP address or some type of a network, that you allow a couple of, because at the end of the day, you have to have at least one or two people that are getting into that system as a management console and doing whatever they need to do.
Okay. Okay, great. So anything else you would like to add from this role then?
No, I'll like I said, I'll be more active. I'll write you some. I'll send you some stuff, and but I just want to chat with you. I think first about what I did and how long
Yeah.
I've been doing it, and all of that stuff, and it's just so that you at least you have the background and everything else like that, and hopefully you can.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is not to structure a lot of bullet points, but just enough to give people a flavor of what I did. I think a lot of people know what an IT director in a hospital
Mm-hmm.
setting does, but
Yeah.
uh, but that's me. I mean, it's really involved in all aspects of the day-to-day operations and also the planning
Mm-hmm.
for the future, and also in many occasions just taking a look at what we have and optimizing what we have,
Yeah.
and the vendor
Okay.
relationship, of course. I mean, sometimes the direct reports is misleading, is because of the fact that they look at whether it's 6 or 7 people, but really
Mm-hmm.
whenever you look at the lines of communication with the different people that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, because of all the various vendors that provide services within your hospital,
Yeah.
then that becomes much more magnified, because
Mm-hmm.
you're either with them on an email, or if you engage them in a project, you are now automatically the project manager on your end, and that's how it happens.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So do you think we can move on to the next role then?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. And then you were the solutions architect at Dell Services. So yeah, so what was that role all about, and how were things like when you stepped into that role?
So that role was, they were waiting for me. They held a position for me for about 4 months.
Oh, nice.
It was until I became available from the other project that is probably on the list, which is Chicago, where I migrated a whole bunch of systems.
Yeah.
But basically, the for that particular role, I was brought in to be the senior architect for Stanford University Medical Center
Huh.
in Palo Alto. So I was commuting back and forth between Phoenix and Palo Alto for a year and a
Uh-huh.
half every single week.
Oh, okay.
I did have a place in Palo Alto that
Uh-huh.
the company paid for. Um,
Okay.
Stanford actually paid for it,
Uh,
and basically the objective, there were three major objectives for this particular project, is to collect all of the architectural information and about all of the existing applications, decide
Mm-hmm.
what the build of these applications are, because they were considering building a second data center that is less um, prone to geographic like disasters,
Mm-hmm.
so they wanted the client was asking basically for 4 nines as far as SLAs goes.
Okay.
So we were gathering all of the information and deciding how the systems were architected, how they were designed, how they were
Mm-hmm.
built, who supported them, um, uh, documented all of that, the layers of the application, who accesses the application, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And also as part of that, I had a second role, which is they were on a legacy, what we call a mainframe system. It's called
Okay.
Siemens Envision,
Uh-huh.
and they transferred everything to Epic, which is another
Okay.
EHR EMR system,
Uh-huh.
but they they still had legacy information on the Envision Siemens system. So
Okay.
what I was in charge of is basically um, coordinating the effort between the IT staff of Perot, Dell, and Stanford University, and also recommending a vendor that we can bring in and can convert the data, take it off of the mainframe, and basically shut off the mainframe.
Okay.
So, so part of it is we didn't want to impact any loss of data, and we wanted to make sure that anything that they're actively still pursuing from an AR perspective is alive and well for them to be able to access and go to, in case they, and of course also in some occasions you might get 3 years later down the road, a subpoena or something like that, and CMS
Mm-hmm.
wants to audit all of your Blue Cross Blue Shield accounts from a specific, year of service.
Yeah.
So we had to make sure that we maintain that type of data integrity for them. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my second role, and my third role was with the familiarity with the applications and the support and operations. I was helping Pro Systems basically win a second deal, a second
Okay.
an extension on their contract. The first
Mm-hmm.
contract was 3 years. We were competing against 7 vendors. Then it came down to 5. Then it came down to 3, and then it
Mm-hmm.
came down to 2. It was us and Accenture,
Okay. Okay.
and basically my role was in between all of these different iterations of the bidding process, is to provide the senior leadership, meaning the CIO and everybody else that is at Stanford University and Lucille Packard, with the
Mm-hmm.
information that they needed so that we can structure a deal. Uh,
Okay.
so we built out all of the recommendations, the what SLAs we can meet, if these SLAs, if these service level agreements are a sticking point. Here's based on our understanding of the system architecture, it's impossible unless we invest this amount of money in this system and this system and this system.
Mhm.
Um, so basically, it was a roadmap of how we can win the contract, and basically it was who's gonna come, you know, cheapest, and are we willing to budge? And I think for that particular year, I was already talking to USPI. I was working with
Mhm.
them kind of as for free. So they were calling me on certain things, and I was consulting with them. I mean, I was talking to them and stuff like that for the last
Mhm.
part of the deal, of with the deal with Stanford. But basically, uh, I thought that our proposal was very reasonable. Accenture did beat us to from a dollar
Oh.
amount. They did beat us, and there was a discussion among the the me and other people of the senior leadership, and they said, "Do you think you we should go higher, lower just because?" And I said, honestly, it's a losing proposition. I can
Mhm.
guarantee you we will be back in a year to clean up their mess. So
Mhm.
we ended up leaving everything the way it is, and we kind of walked out uh, and let Accenture win it.
Mhm.
But we ended up staying in a different capacity.
Okay.
So I mean,
Okay.
I knew that there was no way that they can be. I've worked enough of these deals and these contracts to where when I looked at what they wanted to do and the mix of offshore onshore people,
Mhm.
I said, yeah, there's absolutely no way they can they can they can meet this.
Mhm.
And besides, without with their with their promises, I mean, uh, and what Stanford was asking for. Stanford, but at the time I was there, I mean, and you saw that in the accomplishment. They actually won multiple awards, and out actually one of the awards was is that they became paperless, 100% paperless, and they won stage 7 at the highest stage of
Mhm.
the of hospital can have in the United States. So
Okay.
really their main focus for the second phase of the contract was on application stability and business continuity,
Mhm.
and the proposal that we gave them was a little bit heavy on the money if we wanted to really, make sure that we are meeting our service level agreements. I mean, I told them, I said this, it would be totally wrong for us, for me or anybody else to recommend anything other than
Yeah.
that, and live with it because these guys are gonna, you're gonna have probably triple the team and we're not going to
Yeah.
be able to meet it. So,
Mhm.
uh, so that's where we left it, and there was a consensus, which caused a lot of layoffs in the Stanford area, but it did, um, you know, it was it was something that we worked day and night on this stuff. Sometimes we were locked in rooms for uh, 3 4 days in a row, eating nothing but pizza and writing,
Mhm.
proposals and cutting and pasting and redlining and everything else like that. So, but that's my Stanford University. So that's Stanford really. That's the three different areas that I was focused on.
Mhm.
um, Getting more utilization out of Epic, um, transferring them to paperless, moving
Mhm.
old AR to Epic, um, and and building the architectural team so that we can document all of the architectural systems. So a lot of Visio diagrams for over 500 applications that they
Mm-hmm.
used. And we did them not only at the infrastructure layer, but we also did them at the application layer, like who, how many people are accessing the application? Is it considered critical? Is it considered medium? Is it considered low? Is it mission critical? Is it not mission critical? So
Mm-hmm.
we basically gone through that whole exercise.
Okay. So for helping them going paperless, so what was your contribution towards that?
The contribution was is the fact that we just wanted we were working with Accenture and the Epic team to make sure that their billing and their admission, anything that has to do with the front office staff admission, like front staff admission, registration, stuff like that. All of these areas they are set up on some type of systems that can either that are do the acquisition electronically or they scan electronically into Epic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, great. And so any particular reason for not mentioning Stanford on the resume or on the LinkedIn profile?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I was asking that any particular reason for not mentioning Stanford on the resume or on the LinkedIn profile?
No, there's no. It is that second segment on Perot, but
Mm-hmm.
and the only reason
Oh.
why is because in some occasions uh, I, it it goes, it depends on your preference.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people that do whenever they do consulting, uh, especially if they're hired as considered outsource or consulting, they don't
Mm-hmm.
mention the name of the client. They just
Oh.
mention the name of the company that they worked for. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean?
Yeah.
So uh, if that changes and if you want to mention something different, that's fine. Because um, for a year and a half I was at Stanford, and for a year before that I was at Centegra
Okay.
healthcare system,
Mm-hmm.
and Centegra is in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay,
and
yeah, so
and
that's Centegra project that you mentioned under Perot systems.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's another one under Pro System, and basically, really, what I was in charge of is I was the program director on. So I was working side by side with the infrastructure and the application side, and I had multiple. There's really in that particular one, we were in Centegra was outsourcing their IT to Pura.
Mm-hmm.
So so in that particular experience, what I was doing, I was in charge of the entire migration team that was
Mm-hmm.
migrate basically doing the acquisition of all of IT from Centegra to Pura Systems.
Okay.
So I operated in the capacity of application director and infrastructure director, um, and uh, uh, and as part of the deal, I reported to the
Mm-hmm.
CIO directly that was working there,
Okay.
and that that was going to be parallel to the CIO for from Centegra, but from Pearl, and basically um, we had a budget, I think, of about a little bit over 6.5 million, $7 million
Mm-hmm.
after
Okay.
the signing of the project to basically uh, migrate all of their. So we migrated all of their data center out of their
Okay.
hospital
Mm-hmm.
to uh, uh, to Florence, Kentucky,
Okay.
and operate and migrated their help desk to Bowling Green,
Uh-huh.
and and also part of what I was in charge of as kind of under as an unknown is the fact that, of course, I need to understand all the applications to do the migration for all of the applications and understand
Mm-hmm.
what
Yeah.
the system requirements are, and also
Mm-hmm.
recommend what maybe they need to consider as far as upgrades and replacements. But I
Mm-hmm.
also was taking inventory of all of their IT staff uh, and all the way to the director, and
Okay.
basically
Mm-hmm.
making recommendations on uh, whether they are worth keeping or
Mm-hmm.
locally as part of the local support IT staff, or whether we should lay them off, or whether
Uh-huh.
uh, we should absorb them as part of the uh, um, basically the leverage team.
Okay.
So there's in many occasions we had all around the United States. The similar thing I did with Stanford. It was the same exact way. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
there are some people that are experienced in certain things, and instead of deciding that you want to lose them 100%, you say, well, you know what? We do have a SQL team. We have a
Yeah.
McKesson team. We have
Mm-hmm.
a Cerner team, and you take them into a leveraged team, and this leveraged team becomes their new team. And
Mm-hmm.
part of it is that they could remain on site, or maybe they are not even dedicated anymore, and they become virtual, or
Mm-hmm.
they move
Yeah.
somewhere else. You offer them a relocation package. And in some
Mm-hmm.
occasions, we offer the relocation, and the people didn't want to relocate, so that means that they are, that uh, they they get benched, and then they leave. But in basically in many occasions there are some people that you walk in with kind of like your notepad, and you're saying, hey, yeah, uh, I saw all of the sequel team. If there's one or two people that are worth, if you're telling me that we only need two to be taken with us, I'll tell
Mm-hmm.
you what these two are, who these two are, and that's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and 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 that comes from working closely with them and everything else like that. Of course, in some occasions, and many of these occasions, especially in the case of Chicago, you
Mm-hmm.
you didn't want that to be apparent.